what really happened the day the Declaration of Independence was signed. If you picture all the founding fathers gathered together on July 4, 1776, dramatically signing a finished document while church bells rang outside, you are not alone. That is the image many of us grew up with. But the real story is more complex, more tense, and in many ways, even more powerful. First, here is something that surprises most people. The Declaration of Independence was not actually signed on July 4th. That date marks when the Continental Congress officially adopted the final wording of the document. The actual signing mostly happened weeks later, on August 2, 1776. So what was happening on July 4th? By that point, the American colonies had already been at war with Great Britain for more than a year. Battles like Lexington and Concord and Bunker Hill had already taken place. Blood had already been shed. The question was no longer whether tensions were serious. The question was whether the colonies would formally and permanently break away from the British Crown. Inside Independence Hall in Philadelphia, delegates debated fiercely. Not everyone was immediately ready to declare independence. Some feared the consequences. Declaring independence was not just symbolic, it was an act of treason against one of the most powerful empires in the world. If the revolution failed, the men who signed that document could lose their property, their freedom, or even their lives. Thomas Jefferson, only 33 years old at the time, was chosen to draft the document. He worked with input from John Adams, Benjamin Franklin, Roger Sherman, and Robert Livingston. Jefferson wrote the first draft, but Congress made edits. In fact, nearly 1/5 of the original draft was revised or removed. The final version was a collective effort shaped by compromise and political strategy. If you enjoyed this curiosity, leave a like so I can bring you more facts like this. On July 2, 1776, the Continental Congress voted in favor of independence. John Adams believed that July 2nd would become the day Americans celebrated forever. He even wrote to his wife Abigail, predicting that the date would be remembered with parades and festivities. But history chose July 4th instead, the day the final wording was approved. On July 4th, Congress officially adopted the Declaration. That is the date printed at the top of the document. However, the famous handwritten parchment copy that we recognize today was not ready that day. It had to be carefully prepared by a skilled engraver. Most delegates signed that parchment on August 2nd. Imagine the atmosphere in that room when they began signing. Each signature was more than ink on paper. It was a public commitment to rebellion. These were not anonymous individuals. They were merchants, lawyers, farmers, and political leaders with families and reputations. They understood the risks. Benjamin Franklin is often quoted as saying, "We must all hang together, or most assuredly we shall all hang separately." Whether or not those exact words were spoken in that moment, the message reflected the reality they faced. Comment which fact surprised you the most. Another interesting detail is that not all 56 signers were present on the same day. Some added their signatures later. The process was gradual, not a single dramatic event. Over time, the document was distributed to the colonies and read aloud in public squares. Crowds gathered to hear the words that declared them free in independent states. The Declaration itself was not just a breakup letter to King George III. It was a statement of principles. The most famous line, that all men are created equal and are endowed with certain unalienable rights including life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, introduced ideas that would shape not only the United States but political movements around the world. However, it is also important to understand the context. The ideals expressed in the Declaration were not fully realized at the time. Many people, including women, Native Americans, and enslaved individuals, were not granted the rights described in the document. The Declaration set a powerful standard, but the nation would spend centuries struggling to live up to it. That tension between ideals and reality is part of what makes the document so significant. It created a benchmark. Future generations could point back to those words and demand that the country honor them more completely. After the Declaration was adopted, the Revolutionary War continued for several more years. Independence was not secured until 1783, when the Treaty of Paris was signed. The signing of the Declaration did not end the conflict, it intensified it by formally declaring independence. The colonies made reconciliation nearly impossible. So when we celebrate July 4th, we are celebrating more than a signature. We are celebrating a decision to define a new nation based on principles of self-government and individual rights, a decision made by imperfect people in an uncertain moment, willing to risk everything for an idea. And maybe that is the most powerful part of the story. The Declaration of Independence was not born in a moment of comfort. It was born in war, disagreement, fear, and hope. It was shaped by debate and compromise. It was signed gradually, it was risky, and it was far from guaranteed to succeed. If you want to see more videos like this, don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss the next one. The image of all the founding fathers signing together on July 4th makes for a great painting, but the real story is more human. It is about uncertainty. It is about courage under pressure. It is about people choosing principle over safety. The next time you see fireworks on Independence Day, remember that independence was not declared in a single dramatic instant. It was debated, edited, voted on, carefully copied, and signed over time. And behind every signature was a real person taking a real risk. That is what truly happened the day the Declaration was signed. Not just a celebration, but a bold commitment to an idea that would change the world.